Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our Spiritist Talk series that's promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to be here to host this talk today by Joaquim Eleuterio, who will be leading our live with the theme In Search of Lost Time. Hello, Joaquim.
Hello, Sunshine. How are you today?
I'm very good. And yourself?
I'm fine, thank you very much. I'm very
Good.
happy to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. Before we begin our talk, I would like to take a brief moment for some announcements. If you couldn't participate either in person or virtually at the 16th US Spiritist Symposium in Houston, Texas last Saturday, November 5th, and also missed the celebration of the United States Spiritist Federation 25th anniversary, there is still time for you to watch the entire event at the USSF YouTube channel. There are talks, roundtables, and the very special youth panel. If you're interested in learning more about Spiritism, you can watch the complete course, Initiation into Spiritism, at your pace with questions and answers, also at our YouTube channel. And please stay tuned for future announcements on a follow-up course for next year. More details to come soon. And here's one more announcement before we move on to the presentation. On the screen, please note that there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications and promote Spiritism, we ask you kindly to scan the code. Now back to you, Joachim. It is so good to have you with us today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, together with everyone who is watching this live broadcast now, I want to give you a very warm welcome. It is so good to have you here to discuss In Search of the Lost Time.
Thank you very much, Sunshine. I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
I'm sure your best will be excellent.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that all the listeners are as eager as we are to hear from Joachim. And before we start, however, we would like to formally introduce Joachim. Joaquim Eleuterio has been a part of the Spiritist movement since childhood. He is a member of the board of directors of NEECLAFA, a Spiritist Center in Brussels, Belgium. Joachim graduated in economics from New York University. He also has a master's degree in business administration and management from Boston University and international relations from the Université Libre de Bruxelles. He's also a U.S. Army veteran. Very welcome. We welcome you
Thank
very
you.
much, Joachim. And
Thank
please
you.
come here.
Okay, so I will start. Uh, Thank you very much to the United States Spiritist Federation. I also would like to thank my home center, NEECLAFA, for the opportunity that they have given me to be here today. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. The other day, I was reading a book, a French book called À la recherche du temps perdu. This book was published in 1913. It was written by a French writer called Marcel Proust. It is not a Spiritist book at all. It is a book about the society in Paris and France at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. But I liked the title. And the title inspired me to put it in as the title of this presentation, In Search of Lost Time. How do we measure time? How do you consider time within the Spiritist philosophy? Where do we fit as spirits within this time? And I will start then by saying that I look at it as there are two measures of time. There is God's time, which is infinite. There is no beginning, there is no end. God created us as a spirit that is eternal, and we are going on a long trip and a long quest to get near to God at some point in time, in God's time. So God's time is infinite. And then there is what I call human time. It does not include only the people on earth, it includes all of the entities that live all over the universe in other inhabited planets. Human time is finite, so it has a beginning, it has an end, and is based, at least on earth, on conventions. And according to culture, according to history. For example, in Assyrian time, we are at the year 6,772. In Hebrew time, it's 5,784. And Islamic time, 1,443. And according to our way of counting time, we are in 2022. So human time varies a lot from place to place, but it is what we use on a daily basis to ascertain where we are in our material lives. God's time happens between incarnations, obviously, when we are on the other side of the mirror, and during incarnation as well, because we are spirits while we're here. So it has this double aspect, both between and during incarnations. Human time happens on Earth and other planets, as I mentioned before, during incarnations. And essentially, we try normally to forget that there is an end. Even spiritists, sometimes they live as if there is no end, but there is an end. And this is what we're going to be addressing today. In the spiritual dimension, time is infinite, as I mentioned before. The cycles are obviously different from those on Earth, whereas in the material dimension, in a world, in the material world, time is finite. The cycles follow the natural laws of the planet that you're in. For example, here on Earth, the first inhabitants, they saw that there were periods of light, there were periods of darkness. They saw that there were periods when it would rain, other periods where it would snow, and they were curious, how long would it last? And then when agriculture came on, it became very important to be able to measure this time. And this is why societies from that time onwards have tried to measure time in the material world in some form or another. But what is very important to remember is whether it is God's time or human time, time does not belong to us. We do not own time. We are allowed to use it by God, essentially, so that we can accomplish our tasks, our missions, while we are either on the other side of the mirror or here on Earth. At any period, whether we are in the spiritual world or where we are in the material world, our time is limited. There are cycles that are within those times. So we have to keep it in mind. Even within God's eternal time, there are cycles for the spirit. The spirit has to follow a certain, for example, course, or he has to go to a spiritual hospital somewhere, and he has to follow that time. Okay? So as spirits, we live in both times as spirits. We live in God's time and human time, both. As disincarnate spirits in between incarnations, and we live in erracity, which is the state of the errant or wandering spirit. We live on the other side. And when we say errant or wandering spirit, it doesn't mean that you just sort of lost looking for what to do. No. You have on the other side, you also have objectives. You also have things that you have to do. You have to learn. You have to be taught certain things. So you're not just walking around like as if you were lost in the desert. But the vocabulary that Kardec used is erraticité in French, and we talk about erraticity or errant and wandering spirits. But there are also on the other side, as I mentioned, a lot of cycles and a lot of things that we have to do. As incarnate spirits, when we are inside a body, when we become a soul, that is a spirit within a perispirit and within a body, as a soul, during the incarnation, we still are eternal as spirits, because we are spirits inside that body. But we are inside the body, we are limited by the body, we are limited by the body, and we are limited by matter outside of the body. We are limited by matter outside of the body. One important point as well is that there are objectives for each phase of our lives, whether we are incarnate or disincarnate. In the spiritual dimension, spiritual world, and in the material world, at each stage, there are short-term objectives, things that you have to do in the short term. You have maybe to, pardon someone, accept someone as they are, try to find an equilibrium within your family, something like that. And there are also long-term objectives, what you're going to do within that whole incarnation. What's going to happen to you as a spirit? What are the objectives? What are you looking for in order to become a better spirit, in order to become a better entity? So this is what you have to look at, both short-term objectives and long-term objectives. What are some of these objectives? Let's talk about it right now. Well, the first one is spiritual development. We are here on earth as incarnate spirit to develop ourselves as spirits. We have to move away from matter. We have to detach ourselves. We have to absorb the principles of the gospel, the principles as stated by the writing of the apostles, by which reflects the philosophy of Jesus. We have to go towards that. A spiritual development will then allow us to take very small steps towards getting closer and closer to God. Now, to get to God, obviously, it's going to take many, many, many reincarnations. It's going to take us to different worlds. But we at each incarnation, we take these very small steps. And these small steps allow us then to get closer to God. We're never going to be God. We're just going to get closer and closer, but we're never going to reach the perfection of God, obviously. So this is the idea. You have to start moving and on this road to spiritual development. There is also something very important, which is intellectual development. You have to begin to want to learn about the universe, about where the world that you live in. You have to try to understand what's going on here on Earth or out there in the universe. There is also something very important, which is self-knowledge. You have to try to know who you are as a spirit. Go into this internal voyage to try to discover what makes you tick, what makes you go forward, what motivates you. What are your qualities? What are your defects? What are your vices? And this will then allow you to better develop yourself as a spirit. You have to learn to increase your capacity to love. And that is something that you have to always keep in mind when we come on earth, is basically we are here to love. We are here to learn how to love. Love our children, love our neighbor, love our friends, even love our enemies. And it's very important for us then to understand that we come with a certain, we arrive here when we are born into this world with a limited capacity to love. And the name of the game while we're here is to augment, increase this capacity to love so that we can love more and we can love better. And then we are able then to increase also our capacity to console those that are suffering, allowing you to help your fellow man, your fellow women, your fellow people here on earth. This is one of the most important things you have to keep in mind. We are here also to help. We are here also to console. And also to increase our capacity to pardon. Learn how to pardon is very, very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things that we can do while we are incarnate or while we are on the other side. How can we pardon someone that has done us wrong? How can we pardon someone who has hurt us? It is very, very difficult. But this is one of the exercises, and this is one of the privileges that we have when here on earth. We have to learn. We have to start working on it. And sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes a whole incarnation for you to be able to make principally the big pardons, the pardons of those people who have really done you wrong, perhaps a parent, or perhaps a mother or a father, or a brother or a sister, or some lost love that you left 20 years ago. But it is something that you have to do. Now, when we say, this is very important because Jesus said, you have to love your enemies as well. And the only way that you can love your enemy is by learning how to pardon. And pardoning is also very good for yourself because it takes a burden out of your heart. It takes a burden that you are carrying, because when we arrive at a particular incarnation, we arrive here with a lot of baggage already, with a lot of resentments, with a lot of people that we don't like, people that were our enemies in the past. And by pardoning people, you are lifting some of this burden. You're allowing you to move a little bit lighter, move forward in a better way. So this is very important for you to realize that it is basic to what we are here for, learning how to pardon. As I said, sometimes it's very difficult, and sometimes you have to come up with a strategy that will take you several years, or even several incarnations. But one of the most important things is that one has to remember is that if you don't pardon now, the debt continues. It continues on the other side, on the spiritual world, and you probably have to do it again when in another incarnation. So it's very important to, if you can pardon someone, pardon him immediately. And also, if you have the chance, if the person is still with us here on earth as an incarnate spirit, try to do it while he's here. It's much easier than when he is on the other side. But how do we reach these objectives? How do we reach, besides what we already talked about? Well, we can do it by studying, number one, by working, and by suffering. This is the three most important points that we can make on how to reach our objectives. Studying. Well, we have received the good news. We received Jesus's words as written by the prophets, as written in the gospel. It's there. So we know what we have to do. We know how to behave. We should know how to behave. And we have to develop ourselves spiritually. So by learning these words, by studying them, by studying how the spiritual world works, then we can develop ourselves spiritually as well. But obviously what one has to do, and later on we're going to talk about, is how we're going to apply this knowledge that we had. But studying is very, very important. And as I mentioned previously, there is a quest, that is what I call the external voyage, which is this voyage that we make from the time God created us all the way to when we arrive at a perfect world, a Christic world, where we're going to be closer and closer to God. So this is the external voyage, the quest that we all are engaged in. And we do it in the spiritual world, and we do it in the material worlds. And we need then to acquire, first of all, self-knowledge. As I mentioned, you have to know who you are. And this is what I call the internal voyage. So you have to really, sometimes very painfully, try to understand who you are. Because, for example, you can only control certain reactions, certain behaviors on your part, if you know that you have a problem. It's like the person who has a vice, let's say is an alcoholic. He has to accept that he's an alcoholic in order for him to control that vice. And if you know, for example, that you're a violent person, well, you have to accept that you are, and that you are then able, when you feel that rage, when you feel that force trying to, or even those words in your ear saying, go get him, attack him, you can control it. Control your behavior. It's very important then that you know who you are. Sometimes you have to reorder completely your internal structure. And this is the subject of another presentation, how to reorder your psychological, your spiritual structures. Is very, very complicated. Sometimes you have to, for example, look at, what is real my role? Am I always the victim? Am I always the obsessed? Or am I sometimes the obsessor? Most spiritists never confess they obsess. They always been obsessed by a spirit. So sometimes, you have to reorder the way things are. Sometimes the person that you most love has to come down a little bit from the pedestal, 1 or 2 steps. And the person that, you didn't like or you hated, you understand that perhaps he was not so bad or she was not so bad as you really thought, because there were, let's say, mitigating factors that you should have taken into account. So it's very important to realize that this internal voyage is crucial to your spiritual growth. And the 2 voyages are simultaneous. So they happen at the same time, not just one and then the other. And they reinforce each other. Because when you feel that you know yourself better, you can then, as I mentioned before, you can modulate your behavior, modulate the way you treat people, because you know that there is something there that you need to control. Okay? We also, by studying, we need to develop ourselves intellectually. We need to learn about the world. We need to learn about the universe. And we need to look at science. We need to look at philosophy. And it's good because Spiritism is a science, is a philosophy. It is also a religion. So you can do a lot of studying within Spiritism. The second point is work. And I cannot emphasize this more than I'm doing it now. You need to transform your knowledge into action. Your knowledge about being a Christian, your knowledge about being a Spiritist into action. Because if you don't do that, then it serves no practical purpose. There was a friend of mine who told me once that apparently there is a story that when people pass away, they go up and they arrive at a narrow door. And at this narrow door, there are a lot of people who know a lot of things. They know all of the questions by Kardec. They can recite the gospel by heart, but they have never applied them. They have never used them. So we need to know how to use them in the material world, in the spiritual world. Because as I mentioned previously in the beginning of these talks, on the other side, you also need to act. You also need to do things as a spirit. You're not there on vacation. You're not there just erring in the desert. So you need to give priority to loving, priority to pardoning, priority to compassion, priority to indulgence. I just read the other day a very interesting part of the gospel about indulgence. Indulgence is extremely important because when we go before a judge, what we want this judge to be, we want him to be indulgent. We want him to understand us how we are, that he is generous, that he knows where we are coming from, that we have some explanation for what we did. And the same thing happens when we are judging other people. So indulgence is extremely important. It doesn't mean that you're going to be weak. It doesn't mean that you're going to be accepting behavior that is unacceptable. Not at all. Jesus was very indulgent, but at the same time, he could say when something was wrong and when something was right. So it's very important to go forward with indulgence, but keeping in mind that there are wrong things and right things to do. In summary, we have to become, with work, to be more charitable. By work, we have to practice moral charity. A charity does not ask anything in return, not even a thank you, much less a monetary compensation. So we have to practice this moral charity, materially, giving material things to people, but also spiritually. And sometimes the most important thing that you can give to someone is attention. Just lending your ear. Allow the person to talk about what is bothering them. You know, here in Europe, for example, one of the greatest problems that people have is loneliness. Materially, most people are okay. You know, if you consider the whole world, they're doing very well, in fact. But many of them are lonely. They are distant from family and friends. They are sometimes in a resting home, alone, sick, or in a hospital. So sometimes lending an ear is extremely, extremely important to help someone, and you help that person spiritually as well. But remember, ask for no compensation. If you ask for a compensation, even if it's for a second in your mind, then all the benefit is lost. Let us also, as I mentioned, hear incarnate spirits, hear disincarnate spirits, give a voice to disincarnate spirits. If you have the ability to receive spirits or to give voice to spirits, use it, because that's the best way for you to be charitable towards a spirit. Let us then help incarnate spirits, help disincarnate spirits. In summary, let us work for the good of others. Let us work for the good of others. Work with goodness in our hearts, because if you're full of ambition and you're trying to be better than the volunteer next to you, then it's not good. Make sure that you place others, the neighbors, at the center of your life. Let's place God at the center of our lives. Let's place God at the center of our lives. But how do we work? How do we work? We work without pride. We work without vanity. Because the work does not belong to us. It doesn't belong to us. Oftentimes you see this even in the very best Spiritist Center. People sometimes take possession of the work that they are doing. It doesn't belong to them. The work belongs to God. The work belongs to Jesus. And let us remember also that mediumship is a task. It can also be a trial, in fact. It can also be a test. It is very difficult sometimes to be a medium. And in order to be a good medium, humility is the key. Humility is the key. When you lose humility, then you're going up a very, very dangerous road. And this is why sometimes you have some accidents with some mediums, because they forget that Jesus was humble. The medium, in fact, is only a tool in God's hand. Even a great medium like Divaldo Franco or Chico Xavier, they are only tools in the hands of God, and they were very humble. In fact, they are very humble in the case of Divaldo. Very humble people. The third point is suffering. Suffering can bring spiritual benefits, but we should learn the lessons of suffering without hate, without revolt. Let us avoid making the same mistakes in the past, getting upset, getting angry, because it is not going to help you. It is not going to help you. It's not going to solve the problem that you have. You're not going to solve your suffering. So avoid making the same mistakes. When Jesus met Mary Magdalene, as she was about to be killed by lapidation, people are going to throw stones at her. And Jesus corrected these people, saying that, he who has not sinned, throw the first stone. And they left. And then he said to Mary Magdalene, please sin no more. So make sure that you avoid the mistakes of the past. And one of the points that I like to make is the definition of madness. The definition of madness is to do the same thing the same way and expect different results. And sometimes this is what we do when we're here on earth. So make sure that you do not repeat the same mistakes that you made. And also remember that even if you're suffering, you can still help. You can still help people. And I can recall the case of Divaldo Franco. Divaldo Franco is a 94-year-old man, and he suffers. He sometimes is, sitting on a wheelchair, and he's also helping people all the time. For each material and spiritual cycle, there is a plan, and we have engagements. We have accepted these engagements, and these engagements have to be fulfilled. And there are deadlines, and these deadlines have to be respected. When we are here to do it, we do not know when the cycles in the spiritual world will end. We do not know when the cycles in the material world will end. Many times we are distracted by material world worries, by passions, by obsessions, by sentiments, by pride, by vanity, by revenge, by hate. But also sometimes have the illusion that our bodies are eternal, that we still have some time to accomplish our tasks. And therefore, we waste sometimes a lot of time. We do not see the opportunities that are there to love people, to help people, to console people. We do not see God's messenger. Sometimes God sends us a messenger, and you miss him because you're not paying attention. And what is a messenger? It's somebody like you and me who is there just to show you by his behavior, by his example, what you should do. And sometimes it's there and you just don't see it. I have several cases in my life where that has happened, where you want to see an example of a simple spirit, as mentioned in the gospel, and there is somebody there just in front of you. And this messenger will tell you the eternal truth. He will show you that time is short. The time is short. And he will tell you about the lost opportunities. Sometimes we lose our ways. We do not know really when we're going to leave, but we need to be aware of it. That we can leave at any time. We can leave at any time. Maybe 10 years ago, I had a near-death experience where I was there 1 minute and I was gone the next. And if I had left at the world at that time, I would not have accomplished a lot of things that I have accomplished afterwards. I would not have pardoned a lot of people that I should have pardoned. I would not have improved myself as a spirit, or at least try to improve myself as a spirit. So it is very important to know that you can leave at any time, no matter which age you are. You can be 25 years old or 90 years old, and you can leave the next moment. And obviously, it would be a pity if you left this world without accomplishing your tasks, without accomplishing your missions, only to come back later because you still need to do it. So let's remember that time is limited, that we have objectives, that we have commitments, that we chose these commitments. Most of the time we have a say on how we're going to be incarnated. We choose our parents, we choose the places that we're going to live, United States, Brazil, Europe, etc. We choose our partners. So we accepted these commitments. So before it is too late, we have to go and search these lost opportunities. We have to search compensations, how we can compensate other people for the wrong that we have done them. And we have also to search for this lost time, time that you wasted doing material things, looking only for your pocketbook, looking only at your ambition. So one of the things that is very useful to do sometimes is to do a balance of your life, do a balance sheet. Are we better now than when we arrive here on Earth? Are we worse? What have we learned? What have we learned in this time? Can we love more and better? Can we love more and better? So by doing that, you then place yourself, maybe I still need to work a little bit on myself. How can we pardon more easily? So we cannot hide from God. In fact, we cannot even hide from ourselves. There are no alibis. There are no excuses, in fact. We have received the guidance from Jesus. We have received the guidance from God. And we should not wait for perfection. We have to start right now, to work right now, to learn right now, and even to accept suffering right now. And we have to move right now towards the light, towards salvation. Lost opportunities to close these talks. Lost opportunities cannot be recuperated. Lost time cannot be recuperated. Let us concentrate in the present and the future. Let us love without conditions. Let us help without restrictions. Let us pardon those that have hurt us. In this way, we can compensate for lost time and for lost opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joachim, for your beautiful reflections on time, so that we're not looking back at the end of our earthly life, of our incarnation, and feeling we've wasted it, which we know, we've heard from Allan Kardec, happens a lot. So turning towards God, towards Jesus, and charity, and always loving more, right, Joachim?
Exactly.
I know, that's our path.
Yes.
I think there may be some questions from the audience. Yeah, and there actually is from Jasko Arakawa. He says, "Hi, Joachim. We often hear that in the end of life, last weeks, last days, or even last minutes on Earth, some get sometimes a genuine and painful realization about the time wasted or missed relationships, etc. How are these experiences equated in terms of evaluation of reincarnation success?"
Yeah, that's a very important question, and I think it goes to the crux of the question that we're talking about today. There's a very well-known book called Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody, where he analyzed near-death experiences. And Buddhists saw Buddha. People who did not believe in God saw a great light. Christians saw Christ, but they also a tunnel of light, and at the tunnel of light they met someone and they had a review of their lives, and what they did wrong and they did correctly. And every time they came to a point where they refused to love somebody, there was a certain amount of pain which they felt. So there is a final exam, but it is extremely important that you understand that loving is what we're here for. Forgiving is what we're here for. And every time that you refuse to do that, then your incarnation sort of lost some of its purpose, sort of lost some of its objectives. And one of the points that I always try to make when I make any presentation, when I talk to someone, is that if you don't pardon now, you will have to pardon later. If you don't solve the problem today, you will have to solve it later on, either while the other person or the other spirit is in the spiritual world, or you're going to meet again in a future incarnation. So the problem does not go away because of the passing of either one of the actors. The problem continues. The only way that the problem disappears is if there is a pardon, if the situation is resolved, if there is a compensation, if you give them love for something that you pay with love, something that somebody gave you negative, in a negative sense. He was bad to you, but you paid him with love. So this is what pardon is all about. And if you solve the problem, then that problem disappears from your journey. You have other problems, but not that one. But if you stick to, I will not accept it, I will not pardon, then you come back. So you basically lost an opportunity, and you probably wasted some time of your incarnation.
Exactly, Joachim. And Allan Kardec was so clear in teaching us and telling us there is no salvation without charity. And we know that forgiveness is part of the definition, right? Goodwill towards all, indulgence towards others' imperfections, and forgiveness towards others' offenses, and self, I guess, right?
Yes. It's extremely important to forgive yourself. Yeah. Many people go through life, sometimes tragically, hating themselves. Some people sometimes, and I am not judging them, I am not passing judgment, I'm not condemning them. Sometimes people have a long suicide of 50 years, 60 years, because they basically never accepted their spiritual state when they arrived. They did not accept that they had weaknesses. They did not accept that they had vices, and they were not able to deal with them. So it is very important to learn about yourself so that you can be at ease with yourself. Not that you're going to, like I do every morning, I look in the mirror and I said, wow, what a nice guy, what a beautiful guy, wonderful. Not like that, because that is vanity, obviously. But what I'm it's a joke, by the way. Yes. But what I'm trying to say is that you have to be a friend of yourself. You have to like yourself. You have to be at ease with yourself. And in this way, if you love yourself, as Jesus said, if you love yourself, then you can love your neighbor. If you don't love yourself, then it's very difficult for you to love your neighbor as you would love yourself, because you don't like yourself. It doesn't mean that you are going to hide, your defects, but accept who you are, accept you as the whole you, and then try to work on those things that you can change.
Exactly. We continue on doing our very best, always having our north is Jesus, right? So there's another question, Joachim, from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Could we see lost time as the time we did not spend in doing the good, namely charity, which includes forgiveness?
Yes.
I think you kind of answered that already.
Yeah, this is the question that I've been waiting for for a long time. Because when I went to live in the United States, there were no United States Spiritist Federation, it was a Spiritist desert, at least where I used to live, and that turned my attention to other things. I wanted to become rich. I wanted to become successful. I wanted to go to school. And for a long time, I didn't do anything that I wasn't paid for, essentially. I was not doing any charity to anybody. And I was just looking at myself and what was good for Joaquim. So I wasted a whole lot of time myself. And so I consider that to be the crust of the question. If you're not doing charity, if you're not helping people, if your neighbor is not at the center of your life, if God is not at the center of your life, then you are wasting time. Then you are basically here losing time. And what happens, obviously, is maybe that's what happened to me, is that at some point in time, you have to do a reset and change the way you behave. And sometimes it goes through painful experiences like becoming spiritually unbalanced. Because, for example, if you're a medium and you're not exerting your mediumship, sometimes an imbalance arrives, and it arrives at the worst possible time sometimes. So this is what you have to do. And this is basically how I see it. If you're not helping other people, if you're not helping other spirits, then you are wasting your time. You're losing time.
I really heard you when you said, if your neighbor, or we can say God, because God is our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, right?
Yes.
Is not in the center of our lives, we're wasting time. So that
yes,
is
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm really
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you for being so clear, Joaquim.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And here's another question. Are you ready? So again, from the United States Spiritist Federation, we know that we should guard ourselves from being miserly with money. Would you say the same applies to time, talents, knowledge, etc.?
Yes, I think so. None of your talents, none, absolutely none, belongs to you. Absolutely none. All of the talents you have were lent to you by God. So, for example, I have a certain talent for music, for languages. Okay, they don't belong to me. It belongs to God. I have rented that from God, between brackets. So, if I don't share that with other people, what good does it do? If Mozart did not share his music with millions of other people several centuries later after his passing, what good would have he done to the world? So you have to share what you know. You have to share knowledge. Obviously, in a society, in a modern society, people have a tendency to look at these things as personal property. And we all have to live, we all have to survive in a material world. But there are certain things, for example, talents that go beyond a certain level that you can share. If you know, for example, how to play music, share that. Teach that to people who cannot play, people who are desperate to learn to learn a certain skill, but they don't have the means. So share with them. This is also part of charity. And being miserly is never good. Is never good, because being a miser means that you're very egocentrical. You keep everything to yourself. What is mine is mine. What is yours, we share. So we should not do that in life.
So what you're saying by sharing is also not charging money.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely so. Well, there's a very well-known saying in Spiritist philosophy, is that give for free what you receive for free. So if you are a medium, you should not charge for it. Absolutely, that is the road to perdition if you start doing that. So if you receive something that really you feel that this is something special that God have allowed you to have, well, you should share that with people. You should share it. Absolutely should. And not everything in life is money. One of the things that we have to learn as we progress in a given incarnation, as we progress from incarnation to incarnation, is to become less attached to material things, less and less attached. And maybe we should start the exercise, by beginning to share some things that we are close to our hearts. Maybe we should share that. And it's very important. Also, a concept which I consider very, very important is to let go. Sometimes you have to let go with love. Let go with love of your possessions. Let go with love of your children, for example. Let them live their own lives. That passion that you had 50 years ago, let it go. That parent that died 20 years ago, let it go so that they can continue to follow their studies in the spiritual world. So sometimes you have to let go. And by letting go, you become lighter. And that makes you move faster along your quest.
That way, our angel wings become bigger.
Yes, exactly.
So I think we have one more question, Joachim.
Thank you.
Oh, we don't? Okay, so yeah. Oh, no, there is one. I thought there was. So with our limited earthly perspective on linear time, could you speak about how past, present, and future are really all here at the same present moment?
Well, look, it's a very difficult question to answer within the limited amount of time we have. Normally, in material world, we look at time as linear here. One sequence after another. We have lost the ability we have lost ubiquity, which is the ability to be in time everywhere, because we are within matter. So it's very difficult for us to go back to a situation where we were when we were spirits only. A spirit can be here, can be in Brazil, can be in Europe, can be in Arizona at the same time. But we as incarnate spirits cannot be. This is the most important thing to keep in mind. The other point is that there are impressions. You live within yourself, so you can think of yourself as being now at this point, 2022, but you can also suffer for something that you felt in the 19th century or something that may happen to you in the future. So in this sense, that is how I see this situation evolving. I'll give you an example. One day I was in a Spiritist gathering, and all of a sudden I felt a very powerful feeling about a famous Civil War battle in the United States, the Battle of Shiloh, and I felt the presence of someone who had been in that battle. And at the same time, I felt that I had been his friend at that particular time in that particular battle in Tennessee. So sometimes in certain situations, you can really feel that. You have to be careful, obviously, that it has to be in a spiritist gathering that is well controlled, that is well protected, because sometimes these feelings can be a reflection of spiritual imbalance. But the other example which I gave is once I was in London. I was bicycling in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, and I went to an old disused cemetery called Chelsea Cemetery. And as I walked in, I saw a bunch of people walking around, children, mothers, daughters, men, women, and some of them were walking in places that couldn't be walked. So that is something that sometimes arrives. But time is very flexible in the spiritual world, much less than here on earth. It is certainly not linear.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Joachim. That really sheds light on that question. And Thanks again for your beautiful talk, the reflections, the clarity. And I think we all feel a boost towards making charity one more time more the center of our lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you very
And
much for the opportunity, and it's been a joy and a pleasure.
yes, yeah,
See
yeah.
you on another opportunity. Thank you
Yes,
very
yeah,
much.
it's wonderful. And Joachim, so please stay because we're doing one more announcement and then the closing prayer.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you so much again for your time. For your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So we also thank everyone who was present with us, listening, attending this live talk, and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Along those lines, next Saturday, November 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, please don't miss our next live, and this will be with Gustavo Silveira. And he will be talking on Blessed are the afflicted, for they will be comforted. So before we close, I'm asking you, Joachim, would you be willing to do our closing prayer for us?
Of course, yeah, it would be a pleasure and an honor. So let us close our eyes, breathe deeply, feeling the air that enters our nostrils. And little by little, we feel the energy coming from the universe. Little by little, we feel the energy that invades every cell in our being. We feel love, we feel compassion, we feel hope, and we also feel the vibrations of these feelings. These vibrations which allows us to connect to the spiritual world, allows us to connect with our brothers and sisters which are sharing this world with us, but also with all the spirits that inhabit the universe. Let us send to these brothers and sisters, let us send to these spirits our love, so that they can go towards the light, so that they can go towards God, towards salvation, so that they can find within themselves the power to forgive, the power to forget, the power to allow beauty to enter their hearts. Let us also thank Jesus for the beautiful legacy that he left us, for all the words written by the prophets that guide us every day of our lives, that allows us to move forward in our quest towards perfection. Let us finally raise our voices and our thoughts towards our Creator, to God, to thank him for the privilege of being incarnate, of being here, being able to reflect, of being able to think, of being able to speak in this world so that we can help others. But also, let us thank him for the life, the eternal life that he gave us in the beginning, which allows us to be eternal spirits. And now, let us also ask him to bless us and to give us his permission for us to close our presentation of today. Amen.
Amen, and so be it. Thanks again, Joachim.
Thank
And
you.
please say hello to Europe from us.
Okay, I will do so.
And have a beautiful weekend, everyone.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.